can't help my anxiety issues.
Get like a little
All right.
squishy or something.
I can't help that I fidget. I
Okay.
fucking fidget.
Can we get started?
Yeah, but I fidget. Can't help that shit. Like my freaking wife. It's not like I want to be this way. I just am. God damn it.
This is all going in the podcast,
I
man.
don't care. Damn it. Anyway.
Are you okay?
Yes. Go. Steven.
I don't want to do Steven anymore. I missed you. I haven't been here in a week. Not quite a full week. It's been a partial week.
It felt about a week.
Yeah, I left on Tuesday.
And I have to say though, I'm glad I wasn't with you with those pictures you sent me.
What, the rain?
The rain and the cold wind.
Yeah. First day was beautiful. So for listeners, right, I just came back from teaching at the Indiana SWAT Officers Association's annual conference. Great time teaching our rifle carbine class. It was the same class ran twice, so 2 days, right? 1 day each, 2 different groups. I had 11 people on the first one. The second day, Friday, I had 18 people.
Which is usually the norm when we teach at these conferences. The word gets out the first day, and then everybody ditches their classes.
Well, I had a person that wasn't even part of the conference. I mean, he paid for it, but a mutual friend of ours told him that we're teaching the class. He's like, I called my chief. He got the day off, and he drove 3 hours to take our class.
Oh, wow.
And I'll be honest, I didn't think we'll get many people because Friday, as you mentioned, it was rainy, it was cold. It's also the last day of the conference, so typically people want to just play. They already did their drinking, and so everybody they wanted to see got all the free swag, so they just kind of split. And I'm like, okay, if I get 5 or 6 people, it's going to be a good class. And people just kept trickling in, and by 8 a.m. start time, I had 18 people sitting,
which is a big group for people who aren't used to teaching. That's a big group.
It was a big group. Running by myself, that was challenging.
By yourself, even more so.
But it went really well. I told Michael earlier, I think hands down one of the best classes I've taught in a long while. It flowed really well. Students were very receptive, asking good questions. The drills were good. So I think our class is always great. Obviously, that's my narcissistic part coming out. But
we're one of the few who always strive to want to make them better.
Yeah, always change it. So the drills were a little different. Came up with some new ones, so that was fun. So it went really, really well. So I'm excited. But I haven't seen you since Monday, and I'm back.
It's been busy.
I saw emails, I saw text messages. But to your point, the first day actually wasn't bad weather. It was very windy, but it was warm. Sun was out, so it was actually a nice day at the range. Only the targets kept flying off. We had to keep chasing them and stapling them.
Should have shot a moving target,
right? Apparently, there's rules at that range about just shooting in one direction.
One thing I learned about being attached to a British military unit back in the day, they couldn't stand training on American ranges because there were so many safety rules.
Oh yeah, it's hard.
So, but we do it to ourselves, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also there for a reason. It's a catch-22.
It is.
Most of these safety rules are a result of somebody doing something stupid.
Correct. And you expect, especially operators or just professionals in this profession in general, you expect them to have some level of competence and maturity, but I think generationally, unfortunately, that has declined.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Significantly. So we don't have that same, hey, dude, I trust you. You do this.
It's also, you see all these memes, not about shooting necessarily, but about lifestyle, right? Of kids our generation, riding bikes without helmets and playing on
drinking from those,
doing all this kind of stuff that nowadays as parents are like, oh, you should put a helmet on. You should not get on that swing and all those safety things, right? And we survived.
Yeah, I'm still that way with my kids.
Well, and so am I, as you see. I mean, you see Gal here running around all the time doing stupid stuff, and I encourage that. But I will say we have a generation of kids that are eating, I don't know, Tide Pods and stuff as challenges. So it is Darwinism. It is Darwinism.
Yes, I think it's this newest generation that has made me, I don't want to say question my faith, but at least question some of the theories of Darwinism.
Right. I saw another good meme. I know we're getting off topic here, but
significantly,
modern medicine. Yeah, modern medicine has saved way too many lives that shouldn't have. So
I would have to agree with that statement.
There's a lot of people that shouldn't be here today. Anyway, so I saw it was good. I'm gonna take this opportunity to thank our hosts there. So the guys around the conference, Mike and Craig, they were awesome, and everybody else on their board, they were really cool.
I don't think I've done in Indiana yet.
You have, and I'll tell you why I know that, because that's when we decided we're going to start a Maryland one.
Oh, that's
That
right.
was in Indiana.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right.
So you did at least one with
I
me.
did. I did.
But yeah, Indiana was great. The board was great. Everybody there was great. Everybody at the vendor show. Ran across some old friends, made a bunch of new ones. Speaking of old friends, just to kind of like as a teaser, we're going to have Sean Soller from Medicine in Bad Places, retired NYPD ESU. That's their SWAT team, right? The tactical team, emergency services.
Emergency service unit. Yeah, they're a rescue unit
as well. But he does a lot of medical training, a lot of tactical training. So we're going to have him on our podcast. We finally solidified a date. So we're going to record in a couple of weeks.
And Chuck Norris.
And Chuck Norris. For our listeners, it's not really Chuck Norris. But I told him he has to grow his beard again for the podcast so we can put it on it.
And wear a cowboy hat.
Yeah, our friend Dana from VTC. He said he was reluctant in doing it the first time. That's why he never scheduled it. But he since did 2 other podcasts, so he feels more comfortable. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I told him we'll still make it uncomfortable for him because that's what we do.
Yes, we do.
So it was a good time. But anyway, so last week we started talking about leadership, right? We did leadership part 1, and this is going to be probably an 8 to a 10 parter podcast, because we try to drop one lesson every time. You can't cover all of leadership in one sitting, and again, these are lessons that, like everything else we do on the side, are hybrids between what I bring from the Israeli military and what you bring from American culture and law enforcement specifically. And we started presenting to this extent to other agencies, so it's been very well received. And last time we talked about, we always like what's the word, highlighting the anomalies of what we do a little bit different, right? Because everybody always hears the same mantras. The idea is not to do the same thing every time. And we discussed leading from within versus leading from the front. And so I think we discussed that well enough.
Yeah.
And, And we wanted to move on to the next one. And the next one that I wanted to talk about is at least in the Israeli military. And I know you did that with your with your officers and your squads and so forth as well, which is very progressive on your end, to be honest, because we see it.
Oh, I 100% agree. I got a lot of, and this backlash from other supervisors,
right? Because it's not the norm, right? But the law we're talking about is when we encourage, and I would say encourage is probably not a strong enough word. We almost demand everybody to chime on and voice their opinion on any decision making. So to give an example, me, I started a company in 2007. And I've been a sole owner for the longest time, and always the manager and CEO. But yet, I cannot think of one decision, at least a major decision, that I did not bring at least a leadership team, and oftentimes all of our team, and say, okay, what do you guys think? What do you guys see that I don't see? And decisions were made as a team, right? Because oftentimes what happens is, certainly in tactical units, but also in business, is the person that's been doing it the longest, the highest ranking individual, so to speak, kind of develops these blinds, right? They may start open-minded because just like everybody else, but the more they do something, the more they get into that norm and the way of doing things, and they stop seeing everything around, the potentially better option, right? Or certainly different options.
Right, because they keep doing what works for them and not necessarily what may be better,
Right, and that is one thing that we had a former employee who since moved back to Israel, who we both love dearly and was a great asset to the company. And one of the things that he came to me at one point with a question, and him and I did not see things the same way on this thing. And at some point, going back and forth, I told him, I'm like, do you want my opinion or do you want me to support your opinion? And if you want me to support your opinion, I will. If you want me to voice my opinion, I'll do that as well.
There's a difference.
But the point was that he did things a little different than the way I did. And that was great. I mean, I had to keep reminding myself, and oftentimes him, that the reason I wanted him to be part of the team is because he sees things from a different angle, that I got complacent, in a sense, in the way I'm thinking, in the way I do things, and I needed a fresh view. And now I see it a lot now with our newer generation of staff members that we have, from our receptionist to our marketing director to some of our instructors, right? and we see that they'll come with, why are we doing it this way? Why not doing it differently? And it's like a light bulb going off. It's like,
Right.
you know what? Never thought of that. Would have never occurred to me. So I'm sure you see it a lot, or you used to, at least in law enforcement, where leaders are kind of like, well, do it my way because that's the way it's always been done.
Right.
Right.
There's no term that I say it all the time that makes me more sick to my stomach than this is the way we've always done it. I think it's toxic, it's harmful, it's dangerous to think that way. But yeah, and when I first got promoted to a supervisor, you know, there was no at the time, and I still don't think there is any formal development of leaders, right? And I know people say leaders are born, but you can at least guide people into proper leadership, right?
We spoke about it last week.
Yeah.
But didn't you mention that there is a class you took in a community college? Leadership class?
But that was independent of the police department.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, that was independent of the police department. And most people took it just to look good, to make their resumes look better when they presented their portfolios to the promotion board. But you get promoted and there's nothing. There's no guide. You hit the streets, and unfortunately, a lot of these people that get promoted fall back on the idea of, well, I'm the supervisor, I'm the leader, I've got to show of force kind of thing, right? So they're going to start making decisions. Sometimes they're not the best, or they fall back on what they know, the military, etc. And that's dangerous sometimes, because the police department is not the Marine Corps, it's not the Army. So I had to transition my mindset, which I was able to do, and articulate it into civilian. I always used to hate when people say law enforcement is paramilitary, because it's really not. Yeah, we wear uniforms, we have a rank structure, but it's nothing like the military.
I agree with you on that. I will play devil's advocate in the sense that I would say the lines are getting blurrier. We see military, let's say in Iraq and Afghanistan, doing more policing.
So then they would be the other way around, like reciprocated.
Right, but police also does more, I would say, paramilitary operation. If you think of an active shooter response, for example, as a military operation, right? That quick response.
I'm not talking about individual events. I'm talking about the institution as a whole.
Okay.
So yes, those responses are military responses. They're aggressive. They're, just like you do them. I'm talking about as an institution as a whole. So, I'm not going to be the drill instructor, like to my guys. I can't have all my officers, everybody on your feet, inspection time. You don't get the weekends off type.
You may get sued.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So, one of the first things I did is I found the senior officer in the group. So look, you're the senior guy. All right. It's been a while since I've been back on the streets. I'm the supervisor. I'm getting my feet wet again. I have total confidence in myself, but I also need you to guide me. That's one of the first things I did. And I addressed the entire shift the same way. I'm here to lead you, but I'm also here to learn from you. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm hoping that you won't let me make them, and it's very hard for people to get promoted, especially if they don't have the proper mindset and guidance to humble themselves that way. You know what I mean? Because they're like, I got the third strike.
There's a lot of ego and narcissism involved, right?
Yes, there is.
But to your point, and I agree with you 100%, but I think it's almost two sides to the same coin, right? In the sense that you're right. We as leaders need to obviously keep an open mind, be humble, and seek advice from people that may know better. But I'm even talking about, let's say, a daily decision. And I'm going to give an example. As I'm a SATA, right, at our company. If we decided to come up with a new, let's say, branding, right, a new logo or something, I wouldn't go and try to do it on my own. I would get the team, because our marketing director or even a receptionist may see something I don't.
Right.
To a large extent, they're probably talking to our members and know the demographics even better than me, because they interact with them more often.
They're going to get more exposure.
Yeah, so they'll have ideas that we won't even think about. So it's not me necessarily saying, listen, I trust you to make a decision, which is correct on your end to do, right? But what I'm more referring to is the fact that we lose sight of the bigger picture sometimes as leaders, right? And again, I keep referring to the term of putting blinds like on a horse, right? So we only see our lane, what we know, what we've done,
right,
what worked for us forever, right? But there are better things out there. I mean, everything's changing so rapidly these days, from technology to the way business is done, social media, and I'll be the first one to admit, I am not keeping with with all these trends, it's
No,
impossible.
I mean, you heard me complaining about it the other day. Like I was ready to throw my phone out the window. I'm like,
I have multiple texts going on at the same time. Yes, it is the
I'm like
21st century.
responding. Like I'm just not that person. I'm very reclusive. People think I'm an extrovert, but I'm more of an introvert. But yeah, we have to adopt, overcome, and to add on to that, one of the things I did every time there was a situation that arose, right, came from higher command. There's not enough traffic stops being made. Not that there are any quotas, quote unquote, or there's not enough activity on the street, proactive activity. It's easy for me to say, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, but I'm not the one on the street. So I would present the problem.
Right.
All right. This is what's coming down the pipeline. You guys are a great shift. We've always have accolades. We're always in the limelight in a positive way. So, but now we're getting in the limelight in a negative way. I said, if you don't want the higher up to dictate how we do our job, you guys need to come up with a solution that's going to make them happy, or I'm going to implement mine. I said, but you're the ones that are out there. So you got a week to give me some solutions to present. And then usually was effective. I say 99.9%.
Yeah, they'll come up with good solutions. And if you as a leader keep an open mind, oftentimes you'll see that they're better solutions than what you have. Now I'm going to give 2 examples, one of them from the business world. So let's say a couple of months ago, we got together all of our staff and we wanted to come up with new marketing initiatives. And we got everybody here. We took some dry erase markers. We got our mirrors because there are a lot more of them than we have whiteboards. And we started writing down every idea that was spat out. And some of them may not be the right time. We may not have the budget for some of them. Some of them logistically are impossible. Mm-hmm. But we put everything up there. And then we encouraged everybody to voice their opinion, right? Everybody had to give me something. And actually the marketing initiatives that we ended up going with are not necessarily what I would have thought they would be.
Right.
But that's the beauty of it. I mean, obviously, I was able to grow the company by myself to a certain level, but for me to make it to the next level, I got to recognize and understand that I need fresh points of views, which at some point I won't be able to deliver anymore. That creativity, to some extent, gets subsided with experience, and that's a problem, right? I'll tell you one from the military. So we were planning an operation once, and we had pretty standard means of insertion and extraction to the operational area, and we had a newer team member, and I wasn't the commander, I was the NCO, so my voice is heard, but it's not the decision making per se. Right. And so there's 6 of us around the table, and it was the newer guy that kind of saw something different, without divulging information about the nature of the operation, saw something different that none of us saw before, just because we were so stuck in, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we always went in. So why would we do things different? This way was more creative, arguably logistically easier, and it worked flawlessly. We decided to implement it. I give credit to my commander that said, you know what, I like it, let's give it a try.
Yeah.
And it worked out great. And I think that's a leadership lesson that is lost on a lot of people.
I 100% agree. I've experienced it myself in my time in tactical operations, the wolves I dealt with there. I mean, I had a similar situation one time. Thankfully, I believe it was a sergeant, and I'm not going to name any names because I have no doubt people will get butthurt. He was receptive. It was an operation, and the house we were conducting the warrant on was predominantly Spanish speaking, right? And at the time, there was only 2 Spanish speaking operators on the team, myself and another sergeant who I don't believe was on this operation. And I was a part-time guy, a decentralized. They always looked down on us at the time. I don't know how it is now. I'm not there, so I'm not speaking for the team as it stands now. But at the time, they always looked down on us because we weren't the full-time guys, right? Which is unfortunate, because we brought the same quality of tactics to the table, some, if not better.
And arguably more experience of dealing with the public, because the SWAT guys at some point get detached, right? Correct. That's all they do is these operations. They don't operate within the public as much.
Right. So, this house was unfortunately typical house that had multiple families in it. We knew there was children in it. And I told the team leader at the time, I said, I'm way in the back of this stack, right? I'm hauling the gear. I'm a mule. not uncommon for the part-time guys. I said, but I'm your only Spanish speaker. I said, don't you think I should be towards the front to start translating and communicating what's going on? And it is like you said, the light bulb just went off on his head. Like, oh yeah, I'm like, just because I'm decentralized doesn't mean I'm not qualified to do this. And I did a phenomenal job. Ended up on point, man, and I was calling people out, and it worked out having me up front. And he recognized that at the end of the debrief. But again, he was a receptive supervisor where that light bulb went off. And unfortunately, that's not, like you said, that's not always the case,
right.
And people suffer for that, especially, and it's usually junior people, whether it's physically or in a mentoring way, where that's what they think is supposed to be,
right.
Like, yeah, this is the leader I have to be.
And that's a leader they're going to become later, which is not the way we want it to actually develop, right?
Correct.
So I'm gonna actually kind of highlight two things that you mentioned. First of all, is the fact that you had to come and suggest it, right? The idea from a leadership lesson standpoint, if any of our listeners take anything, is as a leader, you shouldn't wait for one of the junior guys to come to you with an idea that may be better. You should, as I said, seek and almost demand it. Have everybody voice their opinion. It will add to morale because people, they know they're being heard. Listen, even if their ideas is not getting implemented, they know they've been heard, they had the opportunity. And as a leader, you're going to have access to all this knowledge, right? To all these new creative ideas that you on your own will not get. And unless you go and seek it, you'll never find it.
Right.
If I'm just counting on somebody to voice off, when arguably the junior people, for the most part, I mean, I know you, so you don't fall into that category. Most people are afraid to voice up. Most people, specifically in a junior position, they're like, I'm just going to stand here and keep my mouth shut as to not raise unneeded attention,
right,
and wait for someone to ask me something and then try to do the best I can. If I, as a leader, go and demand that everybody says something, just give me one thing you would do different. Or if you don't have something that you would do different, then why play devil's advocate? Why do you think what we're doing should not work? The old 10th man idea, right? For those that are not familiar, the idea came after the Yom Kippur War, right, which was for Israel a big intelligence fault. We saw the amassing of military forces by enemy countries, Egypt and Syria at the time.
That they were convinced.
And they were convinced it was a drill, and they bought the story. And since then, and they were attacked during Yom Kippur, and it was a devastating war. I mean, we ended up winning, if you can call it that, right? By the end of the war, we were threatening Cairo and Damascus. We pushed that far in, but the reality is that there was a big cost of life because we were caught with our pants down. So since then, the Israeli military and all of Israeli security services implemented what's called, I heard the 10th man and the 12th man, it depends who you talk to. But the idea is that if everybody is in agreement, there's one person whose role is to be devil's advocate, to try to convince everybody why what they're saying is wrong. So I think as we lead teams, this 10th man approach is valuable. If we go and say, I want everybody to give me an idea, and if you don't have an original idea, tell me what you think somebody else's idea may not work. And check your egos.
Yeah.
Check your ego. Don't get offended if somebody says that your idea is not as good or they have something better. Because ultimately, it's all about the team benefiting, right? And the team winning.
Well, it's General Patton's quote says it best, and I say this all the time: if everyone is thinking the same thing, then nobody's thinking,
right?
And I,
Peyton.
And I've experienced that, unfortunately, in my time, which really, really, I, like you said, I'm one who I'm going to stand up and.
Yeah, you come up with the stupidest ideas in the office sometimes, but every so often, one of those stupid ideas, like, you know what? There's a nugget of gold there.
But listen, it's like you cast the net, right? You cast the big enough net, you're gonna catch some fish.
Yeah, you're gonna hear people say no 1,000 times. They'll say yes. But I'll give an idea, like or an example by you. When we were talking about products for Silver Savage, right, for this podcast, and we. I was pushing, again, having my blinds on, towards like air pomades and whatnot, right? Because that's what started the conversation. Right. And I got hooked on it. And you're like, no, we can do something that does so much better. And we can with the pen balm and the inhalers. And if it wasn't you voicing up and standing up to against the grain in a sense, right? And, I always seen you as an equal, but the hierarchy of the company, right? Just because I'm the CEO, right?
Right.
But so in theory, people would assume that, okay, BK's decision goes. I'm like, no, Steve was better option sometimes. And sometimes I should listen to Steve. Not often, but every so
nobody should listen to me.
No, that was a great idea. And it's, last conference. By the way, at ISOA, I'm the worst Jew ever. I just kept giving stuff away. I know.
You're not allowed to go by yourself.
No, anymore. You and Michael. I knew you were going to yell at me, but people love the inhalers.
I never leave home without it. It's always in my pocket.
I know.
And I use it. My 3-year-old uses it. And that's the beauty of it, right? It's not just for like rough and gruff guys like ourselves.
Sorry, I had to point you to the microphone.
But yeah, I always have it in my pocket. All right. I always use it. My 3-year-old has got really bad sinuses right now, allergies.
Yeah.
And he asks for it. He breathes it in. Doesn't do him any harm. And
no, it's essential
other than give him a little energy,
a little high. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So again, just give an example to your point about you not being one to be silenced often.
No, and unfortunately, like I said, because I think there's still a large gap within the leadership community, whether it's law enforcement, fire, first responders in general, and military. I suffered a lot from it, and that. Like I loved being on the SWAT team. I loved it. It was a passion of mine, but I also loved doing it part-time because I loved what I was doing on the side. I think it broadened my horizons. Like you said, it just diversified my tactical mindset, my investigative mindset, etc. But when I would bring that diverse thinking in, it was always met with resistance because of this is the way we've always done it.
Right.
And then this mentality of, well, I'm a full-time SWAT guy. I know you don't, I'm like, what are you talking about? You were taught by someone exactly like you before you. So you only know what you were given. You never looked outside the box, and that was something that I was fortunate to be exposed to a diverse culture in the military and in law enforcement of leadership. I told you my first experience with IDF were actually IDF engineers in the Balkans. When I deployed on a peace enforcement mission, I knew what the IDF was. I didn't know how awesome they were, because of the dynamic of the country and what they do. Rather, their training. That was my first exposure. And then, being attached to German mountain units and other various countries, I saw the way they did things, and I started seeing those differences. Same thing in law enforcement. When I started teaching with you and we went to a couple tactical conferences, I remember the first time particularly that really stood out was down in Georgia and how their teams interacted, full-time and part-time, and how their command interacted with their teams. And I was just staring in awe, like, is that what camaraderie looks like? Is that what leadership is supposed to be? So, I started, like you said, going against the grain and questioning it.
And it's amazing how typically the smaller agencies and the smaller teams, I think by necessity, because they don't have as many people to pull on, they are more receptive to that creative ideas from the few people that they do have. And I think that's what started in the Israeli military, right? We are a small military with small budget faced by much greater militaries, right?
In size. You have to persevere with what you have.
Yeah, we got to use what we have. And there's so much human talent. They would be ashamed not to pull on. And I guess that's a second lesson. So we said about having to actually demand it and everybody talks. But as an organization, as a leader, it would be foolish of me to not try to capitalize on it. Because for me to assume that I know it all would be, again, maybe narcissistic. But I know my limits. I know I don't know it all. And there is so much talent out there that my organization and myself, included as an individual, can grow and get so much better. That I don't see why people won't do it, right? What's the downside? And yet people are so resistant to it, specifically in the West. I find it mind-boggling sometimes when I talk to leaders, specifically in law enforcement, because that's who we work with the most, and they're like, well, this is how we've been doing it. It's been working for us. And then you look at a track record and like, obviously it's not working for you,
right?
But you're still resistant to get some fresh approaches.
Change is inevitable. It's just a matter of how you embrace it and adapt to it. And that change is going to come with, your subordinates, which I hate that word. But they're coming with the fresh ideas. I used to tell my troops, and I always refer to my officers as troops, it's just habit. I would tell them all the time. I said, you're the future. I'm the past. All right, we got to work together here, because you're coming in with new ideas. You're enforcing in a new way that I didn't have to. I didn't have body cameras. I didn't have e-tickets and all this stuff. I had to handwrite all my crap. So it was a different mentality, and I tell them, like, you're the future. All right, the change is going to happen with you and for you. I'm the one that has to adapt to it as a leader and serve you. And this is why, yeah, and then, not to change topics too much, one of the reasons why I did a self-assessment on myself, a peer assessment. Every 6 months, without fault, I had a document that I created. It was unofficial, and I had the troops assess me, which pissed every other sergeant in my district off because they were so afraid that it was going to become official. And I'm like, what are you so afraid of? You're doing your job. It's not an issue, right?
If you're not doing your job, you should take it as a learning opportunity.
And that's what I did. Thankfully, I was getting it right. I won't say I got it right because I know I didn't, but I was getting it right. And I would tell the troops that I need you to be brutally honest. I'm not going to take it out on anybody. I don't know how to serve you. Everyone here is different unless you tell me how to serve you. Right? I need to know how to fix me because as far as I'm concerned, I'm perfect. You know what I mean?
I think you are.
That's the narcissistic part. But I said, as far as I'm concerned, everything seems to be functioning. So I think it's okay. Right. But I know it's not. So I need you to tell me what's broken. And that's how I function. And it worked great.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we mentioned it last week, but I strongly believe that our role as leaders is to create new leaders.
Yes.
And the only way we'll create the next generation of leaders is by empowering them to lead and to make decisions. And if we silence them or not support their ideas, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. Because those leaders, they may go off and do their own thing. And a lot of leaders, myself included, actually, I'll share a story in a second. But a lot of leaders believe that if they develop someone to be their own leader and they leave you, it's a loss. And I'm like, no, first of all,
right,
you did a service to mankind.
I've experienced
yeah,
that too.
but the other thing is that leader, later on the road may need something, and who is he going to go to for advice or for help or potentially a new business, if not to the person that created him as a leader, right? So a lot of leaders are afraid to create leaders because of that. The other thing is, if I create leaders and they don't leave, that's what's going to allow me as a leader to take a step back at some point, because there's other people that I can trust now to fill my spot because I developed them to that point, right? So I think there's a lot of value in developing leaders. To that point, I think I also mentioned them last week. We had a generation of instructors, and we created leaders, right? One of them became a captain in the Marine Corps. The other person became a leader in law enforcement and then in religion.
Yeah. First responder ministries.
Yeah.
Enter the Lion.
Yep. So we felt fortunate to do that. And now looking back, one of my proudest moments, right? But at the time, I remember when the Marine said that he's going to leave and go to the Marine Corps. I was personally offended. He did not see it well with me. And it was a learning curve for me to learn that, no, it's my fault. And I said that the best way possible, right? It was my greatest achievement for him to want to go and do what he did.
Right.
So again, taking full credit, being a narcissist. But the idea is that we built a leader that now builds other leaders. And, hopefully at some point along the line, we are responsible to creating next generation of Marines, right? Just because we instilled the skill set by him. Yeah. And he went and capitalized on that. So we're super proud of them. And now as I see my role is, and you see it in the office, first of all, I don't have my own office. We'll share an office, right? So what you guys are seeing in the screen.
Intimately,
right. But the idea is that we make decisions as a team. Everybody's encouraged to voice their opinion, and everybody's encouraged at some point to kind of spread their wings and go and do their own thing and become their own leaders, right? That's how we know that we did our job right at the end of the day.
And you're 100%. And let me pad your narcissistic ego.
Yes.
I've learned so much, not just in the tactical aspect of the martial arts aspect, but in an entrepreneurial aspect, right? I've never been an entrepreneur, but I've had so many ideas. This. My mind is like chaos, floating with ideas, which I've, turned to woodwork and art and stuff like that. but also I have entrepreneurial ideas. And I'm like, I never thought I could do it until I've started, working with you and doing things with you. So now I'm at that point where like, I have this idea and I want to run with it, and I'm going to run with it. Whether I fail or not, I'm going to do it. So at least I can say I did it,
Perfect.
And I never would have reached that point.
And I'm sure you'll do great at it, because if nothing else, you'll learn hopefully from all of my mistakes. Because I made many.
That's it. And stay tuned for that. It's still going to be associated with Masada, but it's going to be a Cosa Nostra, my thing.
It's going to be the Puerto Rican Spanish version.
Of what?
Whatever it is that you're doing. I don't know what you're doing.
Oh, it's going to be an apparel line.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. A veteran apparel.
I need it.
I don't want to give too much about it
I need it in large. Podcast. So I just gave a bunch of my medium shirts to Michael since I grew out of them.
Oh, finally.
Yeah.
So I'll give you all my large shirts.
Nice.
I'll give you all my large shirts because I've had to move them up to XL. I got button downs, t-shirts. They're all
I put on a medium shirt, which for our listeners, it's what I wore for, I don't know, since high school. I've been a medium. And then this past year, I put on some weight, and in the good kind of weight. I bulked up. I got strongest I've ever been. And
knock my shadow box off the wall with your shoulders.
I can move in the office without hitting something.
No, you can't.
But I had to move up a shirt size, and I was wearing a medium shirt. I went down to the gym, and I'm like, this shit looks like a bra on me. So I just
we've been saying that for the last 2 months.
Yeah, that shirt is too tight, man. So
those are not silkies. It's a shirt, different rules.
Yeah, silkies I went down to small.
Yeah, you gotta go small.
You gotta go small with silkies. All right. Well, so just to summarize, we got 2 leadership principles so far that we shared with the listeners, and hopefully, I know a lot of our listeners are business owners and entrepreneurs themselves.
Right, and that's something to note. This is not just military and law enforcement.
Right.
This articulates across the board.
It's for silver savages, and you know what? Take those leadership roles, and I mentioned it in the past, and apply them to your family, if nothing else. You're always a leader. You're leading a unit, whether it is a military unit, law enforcement unit, first responder, a business. The business may be just you, if you're the sole owner of a business, right? But you still have to lead that business, and a family, So silver savages listening to this podcast, people in our age group that are either starting a second phase in their life or trying to maximize the first phase, take these lessons and apply them. That's a key. If you just listen to things, but you don't apply some lessons and try them out and mold them, right? There's going to be an element of what we say that makes sense, some of it a little less, but the idea is for you not to necessarily agree and take everything, but take elements that work for you and own them, make them your own, right? Mm-hmm. In a sense. So the 2 that we discuss is leading from within, work with your troops, work with your staff, know what everybody is doing, be ingrained in it, know how to do it yourself if you need to, support them with their duties. Don't just tell them what to do and tell them, I've done it before, so I know what it feels like. Nobody cares. They want to know that you'll do it with them now. So do that. And then the second one, as we said, is seek that input from your employees, from your staff, from your family members, from your team, whatever it is. Just when you're about to make any decision, it may be a daily decision of how to decorate the bathrooms, just seek their input. They'll give it to you and they'll feel empowered for doing so. And you'll probably end up with a nicer bathroom than if you were to do it yourself. Oh, yeah. Because if I was to decorate my own bathroom, it'd be all multicam and
cami netting,
right?
Hand grenade faucet handles.
Yep. So we're gonna keep with this leadership rules for a couple more podcasts. We'll probably take breaks in between as current events pop up that we want to discuss, or have some guests. Yeah, we have a few guests lined up again, so we're looking forward to having those. And that's about it. It's gonna be another busy week for us.
Yes, it always is.
So things are picking up, and that's great.
That's always a good thing.
Yep. And everybody else out there, stay safe.